This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Wednesday, November 20th, 2024. And I have Shimon here with me all the way from India. Hi, Shimon. How are you?
Hello, I'm completely fine. And I'm so glad someone finally got my name right.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say I guessed, but we've met before and I've heard your name before, so I couldn't screw that up.
I mean, that's one of the reasons of having a unique name is that I get misspelled and mispronounced every single day of my life. So at this point, I take any name that starts with an S and ends with an N. So all good.
Really? So people mess up your name often?
Oh, more often than you imagine. Yeah.
Crazy. So I just saw you in India, and the reason I invited you is partially because I was like, we didn't get to spend any time. It was such a whirlwind trip for me to India. And I was like, I have never had Shimon on the show. Let's do this, you know? And you were available and I had a slot. So it just worked out perfectly. So the first thing on the agenda that I want to chat about is the Find X8 series. We have been talking about this phone on the show for, oh my God, 2 weeks now. And you have one, I have both actually. And also, I've been using it. I took it to India. I took almost all my photos in India with the Pro, at least. So, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think of this phone?
Okay, quick correction. I don't have it with me right now, but I did get to play with the X8 Pro. And I must say, I'm impressed with the cameras are really, really good. And the most fascinating thing is people say, oh, if you have a Google Pixel, you just shoot and forget, the camera quality is insane. Well, that's true, but other OEMs have caught up really, really well, and the Pixel doesn't have an edge anymore, I would say. It's still good, but others are, outclassing it in some areas.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a fair comparison because I think it's a completely different approach to photography, right? To me, you don't buy a Find X series because you just want to hit the shutter button and don't care about it. You do buy a Pixel for that. So you buy a Find X series because you're a photography person. I think that is a truth that remains. And even though you're right, you can use this phone, no problem, to hit the button and you're going to get good results every time. That's an improvement over, and I think it's the same with the Xiaomi, the Ultra series, right? In the past, it was kind of not always as good as a Samsung iPhone or Pixel just mashing the button, and they've gotten progressively better, but at the same time, they're not losing that essence, right? And that's kind of where I think I'm at. So by the way, this is the Find X8. I have the black ones, both of them. And as you can see, I'm showing this to the Patreons on video here. This looks like an iPhone. It's got the same kind of curves. Let me turn on the screen. Same kind of curved edges. I mean, the corners, and then flat sides, slab sides. And this one is missing one of the two telephotos, the 6X.
Yes.
But other than that, it's pretty similar in terms of 350 megapixel sensors. And then it doesn't have the camera, what they call the quick button, which is the kind of like camera control on the iPhone, right? So that's one. And then the other one I have is here, and that's the Pro. That's the one I took to India with me to use. And as you can see, side by side, one is a little bigger than the other, right?
Ever so slightly, yes.
Yeah, ever so slightly. And so this one has that camera control right here. I don't know if we can see it on video. And unlike the iPhone, this is just a capacitive strip. There's no, it does haptics when you push it, and you double push on it, it starts the camera, that kind of stuff. But it doesn't have the actual clickiness of the physical button underneath. And then, of course, the design on this is different because it's got flat screen.
But it's got the Pro in the name.
Well, yeah, for sure. But it's got a flat screen, which is interesting because in the past, all of these phones from BBK Group have always had curved edges on the left and right. And this is completely flat with like a 2.5D glass on top, and then even the edges are a little rounded, like both directions, so it actually feels really nice. By the way, they both have alert sliders, like OnePlus phones, and this is an extra telephoto. So this has 4 50 megapixel sensors, an extra telephoto, which is a 6x. And so I want to hear your thoughts, because you said you loved the cameras, and I do too. I think, I have an Oppo Find X8 Ultra as well, and I feel, and this is a bold statement, I think this takes better photos. The Pro does.
Okay, before we come to the cameras, I would say the X7 Ultra looked far better than the X8 Pro.
That's true.
Design-wise.
But it's also bulkier, right? It's a beast.
True, yeah. I agree. But the whole design with the faux vegan leather back and everything, that looked really nice. But going back to X8 Pro, another hot take. I actually like the the quick camera button on the X8 Pro when compared to iPhone 16 Pro or 16 series, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, not only because it's more flush with the body because it's just capacitive, but also like haptic wise and the whole UI and UX wise, it was far easier than the iPhone one, because the camera control on iPhone is pretty finicky. You have to guess how much you have to press, and then you go into the modes. It's way too much. It should be just press and play.
But the Find only has zoom. There's nothing else, right?
Yeah, and that's the simplicity of it, right? Because
you
don't have to dig much and think about it. Oh, am I going to zoom here, or am I going to change something else? It's just one thing.
I wonder if there's a pressure sensor, because I would really like them to do a double detent. Like, I want them to do a thing where you push a little bit and it focuses, and you push more and it takes a shot. And they could do pure haptics on this. Like, it could be like a small tap when you get halfway, and then a harder tap when you click harder. I don't think they have a pressure sensor, but if they did, I agree with you. I don't like the capture button on Apple. Like, I don't like it. I think it's terrible. And I don't think this is much better. I think because it only does zoom. And honestly, I'd rather just use the screen to zoom. It gives me more fine control, because I have more travel for my thumb than a little bit of travel on my index. Also, it doesn't work when you do portraits, which, as a photographer, I don't shoot everything in landscape, obviously. Yeah. I'm not saying it's bad. Like, I think it's there, and hopefully they can add some functionality. And I think Apple will streamline their thing. But you're right. The way it is on the iPhone, I don't use it. It's just not. I don't think it's good at all.
Another thing about these buttons is, like, considering our phones are light, so when you use the camera button, you get a little bit of shake as compared to a DSLR or a mirrorless camera where it's substantially heavier. So when you press the button, it doesn't move. So even if you're like taking a selfie or clicking a photo, you get a little bit of jitter in it unless you hold it really, really steadily. Like, okay, I'm not moving my phone. I'm just going to press the camera button, and then you use it.
I agree that's a potential issue, but I think that with OIS and EIS today, I don't think it matters. Unless you're shooting in super low light where it has to keep the shutter open a long time. Like OIS today, I mean, even back with the LG G4, right? We're talking 2015 or so.
Yeah, 15, yeah.
Like, I remember trying this out, and I remember that it didn't have a night mode like we have today. It had... You could keep the shutter open for a long time. Yeah. And I remember that just holding steady like this, bracing myself against my chest, I could get a perfectly steady shot because of OIS for a half a second manual control exposure. Yeah. Half a second. So OIS is good enough. I think that with modern OIS and the multi-stacked images that we do now, because we don't open the camera shutter that long anymore, we just take a series of photos. I don't think it's going to be a big deal for most people. But you're right. I mean, you're adding an error, right? You're adding potential for a problem.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But I think this is interesting. I think I like Oppo's implementation better because, as you said, it's simpler and it works as intended. I just wish it was a little more. Like, to me, I think that maybe being able to assign the slider, like, once only, like, it's not like Apple where you can change between modes. That's a stupid thing. I think it's like, with the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, like, you can set whatever on the camera grip to control whatever. You can say the scroll wheel does this, the toggle does that, the double detent does X, right? You can program everything. I think they should have a menu option that says, I want this to be at least exposure and zoom. Exposure would be way more useful to me,
I agree.
right?
And that's what I would say. Like, maybe it's placebo effect, but when I used the X8 Pro, it felt like it was a half stage button as well. It low-key reminded me of, you remember that HTC squeeze thing on their
Yeah.
phones, which was there on Pixel as well? I was like, somewhat reminds me of that. But if they implement it, that would be great. Otherwise, it is fine as it is.
I hope they have a force sensor under there so that we can actually have a double detent if they program it right. And Apple's doing that too. But I think Apple should have a feature where you don't get the menu of options. It just you pick what you want, exposure, whatever. But give us lots of choices, right? I know it's unlike Apple, but right now it's too complicated and too finicky to use, right?
Yes.
So I think this is a better implementation, and unfortunately, it's not on the Find X8 regular. Just so you know, in case you're going to go buy this phone because you want the smaller one, and of course, the telephoto. You're missing one telephoto. But I'm impressed with the image quality, and the thing that impresses me the most in general with Oppo and OnePlus and even Realme is the color processing, right? That Hasselblad color. Even the phones that don't have the Hasselblad logo, I feel like they're using the same color signs. In fact, I remember when I tested the Find X2, we're talking whatever, a long time ago.
Yeah.
2020, something
Possibly.
like that.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, wow, this is the first phone I used from Oppo where I was like, the color science is killer. And I know that Hasselblad has added their own kind of little tuning to that. But I still think that in general, the BBK Group phones, and Vivo included, have really good color science overall. Like what I loved most about this phone, using it in India at the Taj Mahal and other places, was the fact that not only was it giving me great photos, but it was giving me great photos with a great flexibility. Like as a photographer who enjoys taking photos, I had that flexibility to go manual, that flexibility to go auto, that flexibility to pick the lens I wanted for the rest purpose. And this is what I miss on Pixel and on iPhone, and, unless you use Halide or something on iPhone. And even then, it's just like, I just don't like the image processing of the iPhone. I just don't, and I just don't like the imaging processing of Samsung. I just don't and I know iPhone now lets you pick, your color, like your whatever you filter. But that's not the point. The point is, out of the box, I want a certain flavor. And the flavor I get from Xiaomi, the flavor I get from Oppo or OnePlus, the flavor I get from Pixel too, is just vibes with me, and that's why I go back to using a Pixel as a main phone, because I know that I want a Swiss Army knife. I want a phone that does everything well, right? Yeah. And yeah, this Find X8 series phones, they do everything well too. They're flagships, right? But for me, it's things like the software, all the Pixel features, not a lot of the AI stuff, but mostly like things like, now playing, all the call waiting features, all the call, screening and stuff like that. Nobody does it as well. And so every time I go back to using,
agree. Yeah.
Every time I go back to using another phone that is not a Pixel, that's stuff I miss. But at least with a Pixel, I know that I'm not making too many sacrifices on the camera. Yes, I'm giving up a bit of control, like all that manual stuff. I mean, the Pixel has it, but it's not that great.
I really hate how they redesigned the camera app, and
terrible.
Now you can't change the exposure compensation, and everything is tucked away in a setting in the corner. It's so bad. I don't know why they did that.
Yeah,
I don't know
and
why.
Also this toggle between video and photo, like just give us a regular video mode, like Every phone, like I think that there's one thing to be said that Apple has done for us all really well, is they created a user interface that everybody's copied and everybody's in agreement with. Like if you give your Pixel to someone and you're not in video mode and you want them to take a video, they're going to be lost. Like,
this
whereas
happened
you
to
give
me,
them,
like literally last week, I was giving my phone to my parents. Mom took it, she has a Pixel. My whole family is on Pixel, and even then I had to tell them, oh, you press this button, then it goes to video mode. Like, oh, I'm like, wow, that's
you see, you give them the Oppo and they figure it out, even if they're iPhone users. You give them a Samsung, they figure it out. You give them an iPhone, they figure it out, even if they're not an iPhone user. And that's the thing, like consistency really matters. And Is it the best interface in the world what Apple's come up with? Probably not, but we're all used to it now. And it's kind of like, when Tesla took out the turn signal stalks on the Model 3 Highland. Like, it's like, you don't do that. We have standards. We have agreed, like you use, imagine having a car like the Model T, the Ford Model T had the 3 pedals, but the 3 pedals didn't do the same thing as a 3 pedals and a manual car today. It was completely different. It took a while to standardize, right? But once we did, don't break the standard. And I think that's what Google's doing with the Pixel camera interface. And you're right, it bothers me a lot. But back to these cameras, I think on specs are not as good as the Find X7 Ultra on the Pro here. But the results, to me, they're much more fine-tuned and refined. Like, I remember I took the Find X7 Ultra to Antarctica, right, to take photos. So, like, once in a lifetime trip. And I had the S24 Ultra with me. I had the iPhone 15 Pro Max with me. I had my Pixel 8 Pro with me. So I took all these phones and I tried them out. And I loved the user experience and the flexibility of using the Find X7 Ultra. I love the color science, and I love the fact that the zoom lens was very good. Like, that setup of a 3x telephoto and a 6x telephoto, and there's no gap, right? It's like you go from 1x and then you have in-sensor zoom, 2x, crop. It's really good. Then you have 3x, it switches to the next lens, and then you can do in-sensor crop on that. And at that point, you're at the 6x lens, and then, then you do 12x and 13.3 and all that stuff. I love the presets. I love how you can tap repeatedly on 6x and get 13.3, 26.6. Like that. Nobody else is doing that. I think Xiaomi might be doing that, but like that's kind of like what I expect. Standards again. Why doesn't Apple do that? Why doesn't Google or Samsung do that?
Apple will just do 16 millimeter, then 24. I'm like, give me proper zoom range. For a normal everyday user, they'll be like, what is this? What is 16 millimeter? They'll have no idea. Just give them numbers like 1x, 2x, 3x. But yeah, Apple's going to do Apple.
I think that, my takeaway, I wrote a story on Forbes, by the way. If you Google my name and Forbes, you can find the story about my Antarctica camera comparison. And my takeaway was that because of the better tuning, because the Find X7 Ultra, when I took it with me, it was brand new. It had, I think, only one software update before I went to Antarctica. So, after 3 or 4 software updates, they really improved the camera. But at first, it was a little iffy. And I remember the S24 Ultra took better pictures past 13x, past 13x and that 13 to 30, like 13 to 30x range, like just the Samsung nailed that better. I didn't like the result in terms of color science, but I loved the sharpness, the detail. Whereas I found that the X7 Ultra had problems focusing. There were a bunch of things like that, and they fixed it eventually, but none of this on this. Like, this is brand new phone. It's not even on the market yet. And like everything works. It zooms way better than the S24 Ultra, way better. And I need to pull out my X7 Ultra and find out if they've done any more software updates and compare now, because, it's just fascinating to me how, like, if the X8 Ultra, that I'm sure is going to come with a Snapdragon 8 Elite, if that thing, I don't know what they could do better. Like, yes, 1-inch sensor, maybe variable aperture, like Xiaomi finally on an Oppo phone. I'd be into that. But like, even this Pro doesn't have a 1-inch sensor, yet the quality on that main sensor just blows me away. Like, the low light performance, everything is so well tuned. And then the other thing we should mention is both these phones have Dimensity 9400 in them, right? They're not
Which is really good, surprisingly. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not saying this because, look, I'm not biased against MediaTek. I've never been. They're a big sponsor of the show. I have no reason to be. I'm agnostic. But in general, the ISP, at least the software running on the ISPs, is better tuned on Qualcomm than on MediaTek chips. And it's not MediaTek or Qualcomm's fault. It's because the manufacturers seem to spend a bit more time tuning on Qualcomm chips than on MediaTek. And this is why I'm so impressed with these phones, is because I have nothing to complain about. Like, performance is top notch. Battery life is fantastic. Cameras are incredible. The displays are beautiful. What else is there to complain about? I mean, there's an alert slider. There's even a camera shutter control thing. Do you have any complaints?
No, and like you said, I can draw a small parallel about OEMs not maintaining software parity with MediaTek processors. It's in the gaming industry where game developers aim their games at PS5 first. They develop it for PS5,
Exactly.
and then they trickle it down to Xbox and other systems because, of course, they have the largest market share. So they will make sure the largest space is covered, and then they trickle it down. So just drawing parallels to MediaTek and Qualcomm here. But it's fascinating how MediaTek has improved a lot. Like they used to have a reputation, like you mentioned, that it's not as good or something, but they have improved so much, and it's really fascinating to see. Like finally, Qualcomm has a good alternative.
Yeah. And, I ran some benchmarks. I've got the Realme GT7 Pro as well, which is almost identical to the Find X8. I mean, it's missing a telephoto, but the same display, same basic chassis size, same, everything else except it's 8 Elite, right? And I have to say, like, the Qualcomm beats the MediaTek in kind of like CPU performance, but in GPU,
yes, exactly.
the MediaTek is impressive. It beats the Qualcomm at least. And I'm comparing these on purpose because they're made by the same essentially company, right? BBK Group, same OS too,
True.
essentially.
Yeah.
ColorOS 15, Realme UI, whatever the number is, that's Android 15. And so, similar resolution, similar displays, similar camera systems, everything is pretty much same. Batteries are similar. Of course, the Realme is a lot cheaper, doesn't have wireless charging, missing a telephoto. But overall, I thought that was a very fair comparison. And I ran the benchmarks and I'm like, yeah, well, in some cases, MediaTek wins. In some cases, Qualcomm wins. So it's getting closer every day,
Yeah. And it's like you can't go wrong with either of those.
Nope.
You're guaranteed to get a good performance. And at this point, phones are so good, like even for Pixels, it's not as powerful. But you can say it runs just as good for daily usage and camera. You will never find Pixel like, oh, I'm clicking a photo and it hangs. Hasn't happened with me, at least. it might get overheated, but otherwise, no, you won't face any problem.
Well, that's the tensor for you, right? That's my biggest complaint about Pixels is like I hate the tensor chip. It's bad. It's just
it gets
good.
worse during Indian summers when it hits 50 degrees Celsius.
I bet, yeah, but at least it's improved now a little bit, and also radio performance has. Those are two things: overheating, like thermals, and radio performance. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to point out for those of you who are camera buffs, the other thing that blew my mind on the X8 series is the shutter speed. Like it's instantaneous. Like there's no lag, there's no delay whatsoever. Like you tap it, it's done. Like a few times, Shimon, I tapped accidentally, like my finger bounced on the screen. I got 3 photos. And I was like, what? Like what? I don't like to do burst shots. I know sometimes it bites me in the butt because I miss something that flying in the shot that I want to get, right? Like you want to take a good photo of a tuk-tuk with a telephoto, you'd better burst because you're not going to get it perfectly, right?
True.
But I'm stubborn, so I try to just single tickle shot, and I was really impressed with like the shutter response. I think it's the best I've seen yet on an Oppo, and definitely blows away the iPhone, Samsung, and the Pixel. Like the Pixel is always like click, boom, and I'm used to it, right? But like this thing, wow, very impressive.
That's the thing on Pixels as well. Like when you take photos, like multiple photos in quick succession, you'll see that it's saving in the background. Like you won't see the preview down in the corner because it's processing in the background. Like, okay, that's fine. Like just like you, I'm also an intentional photographer. Like I'll wait for the framing and then click. I'm not the one of those like just take burst photos. So yeah, you can just feel it in the Pixels and especially in Samsung as well. But I completely, wholeheartedly agree with you. This shutter speed is so, like, the whole responsiveness is really great on the X8 Pro. I love that.
Absolutely. And then, you get 80-watt wired charging, 50-watt wireless charging. You get big batteries. I don't know. I can't remember the numbers. I'll link to the specs in the show notes, but it's like something like 6100 or something for the Pro and like 5900 or something for the, I mean, it's ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
it's like,
Regardless, it'll last you a day easily.
oh, I can't believe it. Like at one point I set it on my desk for like 2 days without touching it. And I thought for sure, like, battery life would, no, it lost like 2% or something in 2 days. It's doing nothing, I guess it just shut down. But you don't usually see that kind of efficiency. But that's also software, right? Chinese phones in general are pretty good at killing background tasks and just,
They're very aggressive. Yeah.
So I'm not too surprised, but at the same time, I have to say, yeah, they did a good job. And, build quality on these, it's metal and glass. They're beautiful. I wish they gave me the white and pink colors. Are much nicer.
The white one looks so great. The white one is so great. The black one looks monotonous, a bit monotonous, but
I agree.
still.
I agree.
I mean, the hardware is great, so no mind.
There is some nice touches though. Like you see underneath the camera ring here, there is a little orange dot. Nice little detail.
Yeah.
And then I'm surprised actually the power lock key doesn't have like the little orange bar in it, or red bar that, Oppo has been doing for years. Yeah, no, I think, these are great. These are pretty, I'm very impressed. If the OnePlus 13 is anything like a mix of these two phones, like the same cameras as the Find X8 with the same display and, and innards basically as the Realme GT7 Pro at 8 Elite, I'm going to be very happy camper, right? And also, by the way, I've tested these phones in San Francisco. I've tested these phones in Vancouver, where I am right now in Canada, and I've had zero issues with bands, so everything works. If you're thinking of importing these instead of buying the OnePlus 13 when it comes soon, hopefully, go ahead. You don't have to wait till January or whenever the OnePlus is coming to the West.
I'm curious about one thing. Like, I didn't get to play with the video capabilities. What do you think about those? Like, did you compare the video quality?
Very good. Like, I think ever since the Find X5, I want to say, Oppo has done a very good job with, video recording performance. It's still not iPhone quality. Like, I think the iPhone still wins here. Overall, it's just, I think it's just a general Android problem that Google needs to fix, or something that you can never have a perfect recording without a dropped frame on an Android phone.
That is so true.
It drives me nuts. You can literally see it. You're shooting and then you're like, oh, a frame dropped. Like, I don't know if my audience can notice these things, but I notice. And like, like you see it at recording time, and then sure enough, you play it back and there it is. Yeah. And I'm like, that's the only, it's great. Focus is good. Color is good. Resolution, detail, everything is great. But if you keep dropping frames, I can't use this. Okay. Like that's like the basic 101 thing for video, right? Like you perfect frame rate. Okay. Don't drop frames. And that's the only thing that drives me nuts. So I use my 16 Pro for my iPhone for video recording, for anything like work related. And then, I use my Pixel for product photography, and I use or the S24 Ultra because they're always in my bag. And then whatever phone du jour, whatever I'm reviewing right now, I generally like this Find X8, Pro has basically been my main camera for the last 2 weeks. And I've really, really loved it. And it was nice because I was in India last week and been able to really, test it out. But those telephoto, the zooming on these phones is the killer. Is a killer app. Everything else is very solid, but just wow! Like you can shoot at 26.6x, and it's like the results are like.
I saw the photos. I was like, wow, that was like amazing.
It's like 5x on the iPhone. You know what I'm saying? Like, because of their 12 megapixel 5x.
Yeah. Like
the iPhone's a joke in photography. Like I hate the iPhone photos. I don't understand how people like iPhone photos. Like every time I see an iPhone photo, I'm like, ugh. And then same with Samsung. I mean, I tolerate it because I used Samsung a lot for car photography because I need the zoom. I need to be able to zoom because I'm shooting from a distance or whatever. And the iPhone can't do that. The Pixel is getting better at it, but you have better reach on the Ultra with the S series, right, from Samsung. And now I don't want to do that anymore. Now I want to use an Oppo or a Xiaomi because like the zoom performance is just so good. And I played with the Vivo X200 Pro when I was in
Oh,
India. A
that
couple of our colleagues had
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
I don't have it. I asked for one. They didn't respond. Hopefully they'll send me one at some point. But I'm even more impressed with the zoom on that phone.
Now, the other thing is, when it comes to camera brand collaborations, Vivo is doing really good with Zeiss.
I
Feels
agree.
like it's not just camera science, but actual lens technology or something. But they're doing
I
really good.
mean, their approach is to have a 2.5 or 3x-ish telephoto that is 200 megapixel and then do the crop.
Yeah, yeah.
And it works really well. Like this is Honor does that too with the Magic
Yeah,
6 and stuff a little bit. But I think that I like the idea of this. I kind of like this idea that it's 50 megapixel everywhere and you get like that nice little stepping, 1x, 3x, 6x. And I think, Xiaomi does kind of the same where they have the 3x and the 5x. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with the Ultra this year. Yeah.
I mean, having that Meteory 3x telephoto is very essential because that's what the Pixel is missing. Because they have like ultra wide, then they suddenly have 5x. So
Yeah.
in that middle ground is literally digital crop, and
But
after
no,
2x,
they use super as zoom. They use their AI algorithm, which is actually very good, but it's
yeah,
not as good as this. It's just not
exactly.
as
I
good as
mean,
this.
yeah. Till 2x or 2.5x, it's still fine, but once you push the limit till 5x,
Like,
there's
yeah.
that gray area
When you
where
get
it's
to
like,
4x,
okay,
it starts getting crunchy. All right, let's talk about some other stuff. They've got a bunch of news items here I want to go through with you real quick. So speaking of Oppo, the Reno 13 series is coming to China in November 25. So if you're a fan of the mid-range phones from Oppo, that's coming up soon. This is official. There's also a Oppo Pad 3 launching, which is probably going to be coming out as a affordable OnePlus Pad at some point, I expect, right?
possibly, yes.
But yeah, other than that, look, I love the Renos, but there's too many of them. I can't keep track anymore. There was a time,
Okay.
Shimon, when I would
Mhm.
get them. I would get every version, and then I couldn't keep up. And I told them, I said, I can't, guys. I'm sorry. I think I dropped at Reno 8 or Reno 9 is the last one.
Like my favorite has to be the first Oppo Reno, which was flat from the back and it had a shark fin camera.
And the
That
shark
was the
fin,
best
yeah.
one. That was the best one because now every phone has a camera bump. That one
Yeah.
was flat, completely flat. That was amazing.
Exactly. So Reno
old days.
13, keep an eye out if you want one. It'll be coming globally pretty soon, I figure, after that. And then, and speaking of more BBK news, we have a bit more OnePlus 13R rumors here. We've got colors for the OnePlus 13, but they're the same colors as in China. Those are rumors for the Western colors. But the 13R is what I'm interested in here because it looks like the 13R, like last year, is going to be basically the Ace. Last year was the 3. This year's the Ace 5. Basically rebadged as the Chinese Ace series is on the China only. So rebadged, and that makes perfect sense to me. And so now, because I think the Ace 5 is just about to come out in China, and so we should have specs very soon, and you can expect those specs to match. From last week's rumors, it was Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, and big battery too, something like 6,200 milliamp hour or something. So think of a OnePlus 12R and then better processor, bigger battery, but I expect everything else to be pretty much the same. Similar display, similar cameras, similar industrial design. I don't think we're going to see too much craziness here, right?
Yeah, at this point, they've settled on their circular industrial design. Like it started off with OnePlus 10, where it was squarish, and now they've settled on this design, which is great.
I like it. I think it's good.
I mean, I don't hate it, but it was a jarring transition from OnePlus 8 to then OnePlus 9's awkward rectangular shape. Then finally they settled on this. So at least I'm happy with that. There's consistency.
I do like how at the high end, the Oppos and the OnePlus are looking kind of similar because obviously with the Open, right? The Open and the Find N3, that kind of made sense. And now you can really see this. I mean, if I show you this camera pod, right, on the Find X8 here, isn't this the same as the Open? Like that's pretty much the same, right?
Yeah.
So
every phone has this design now, like a rectangular back with a circular camera array. Yeah, that's how it is.
I like it better than the rectangular squarish camera pods like the iPhone has, like the
iPhone needs to change it up. It's looking,
Realme
yeah,
GT7 Pro. Why did they go back? The Realme GT5 Pro was such a sexy phone. I don't understand why they went back to that square design. And all the other Realme phones this year, like the whatever 13, 14 series, whatever it is now, they
there's so
had the
many
round
SKUs.
pot.
Yeah,
It's so bizarre. Like I don't like the best camera pod is the visor on the Pixel, especially the Pixel 9. Like
I agree.
perfect.
So nice.
Perfect. But if I'm gonna take something else, I like the round. I like Xiaomi. I like Oppo. It just makes sense. Look, it's a camera. Cameras have round
Exactly.
lenses. Like, why make it square? Like, and especially square with three triangular. The iPhone. I'm so sick of the iPhone design. So sick of it.
They need to change it up. It's the same since iPhone 11.
And you know what drives me nuts? Everybody's copying the iPhone. This Find X8 regular is just like an iPhone. Look at it. Look at this thing. It's like,
Yep.
other than the camera up here, you look at the bezels, everything. I'm like, why?
And on OnePlus 13, you also have that adaptive peninsula. That's what I call it.
Oh yeah, so
Dynamic Island, no, adaptive peninsula.
the Find X has that as well. The Realme,
Yeah.
everybody still has it now.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. I don't mind that. I actually think Dynamic Island was a really great idea from Apple and very well done. And look, Apple and iOS have copied each other for years, and I don't think there's a problem with that. I think that what we need is to pick the best stuff, right? And I don't think the design of the iPhone today, even if you remove the crappy camera pod, is the best design. I don't like the sharp sides. I think this Find X8 Pro here is a really nice design because it does have a flat screen, so you don't have the stupid curved edges anymore. But it feels so good in hand because it's slightly rounded off in every way. And those corners here are not as curved. Like, I don't like this, like what Pixel did as well with the 9 series, where it's like it's hard to create a user interface. Like, you look at, the battery meter and stuff, and like everything is crunched to the middle.
And you know what? I'm going to tell you something you will not be able to unsee. So do you have a Pixel 9 Pro XL with you? Like Pixel 9 Pro?
It's not. Unfortunately, it's in the other room, and I can't get it right now.
Okay,
but I'll have to look.
That's fine. Yeah. So when you turn on the screen, you'll see the icons on top right and top left. They are not in center with the selfie camera.
I know that. No, I've noticed that.
I was
and
like,
this
why?
this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? It's like they went through all the effort of creating a copy of the iPhone from the front, and then it made a mess of the software, right? I don't know.
That's the thing. I don't like the corner radius because I'm using Pixel 7 and I like how square-ish it is. And
I agree.
Low-key hate how the Pixel 9 series is way too rounded.
That is 100% agree with you. And that's why I like this the Pro version of the Find X8 because it's still a bit more reasonable, right? All right, let's see what else we got here. Okay, yeah, this is a pretty big deal. The ASUS ROG Phone 9 Pro is now official. There's going to be some reviews out there now. You'll see a link to my friend John Mundy at TechRadar here. But the takeaway here is I played with that phone at Qualcomm Snapdragon Summit. I actually wrote hands-on for TechRadar, same website. Check it out. They wouldn't let us run benchmarks. They wouldn't let us really do anything more than just take photos, play with the UI a little bit, play a few games if you wanted to. And honestly, here's my takeaway. This is the same pretty much as ROG, Phone 8 and 8 Pro last year. Same industrial design, almost identical, which is nice because for people who don't want to carry a flagship around that looks like a crazy gaming phone like Red Magic, this looks pretty tame. And it's a pretty solid flagship, pretty solid cameras. Specs are very similar to the 8 and 8 Pro last year, except you get an 8 Elite. That's basically the takeaway. So, yeah,
but do you feel like gaming phones are redundant because you can do the same thing on similar spec phones? Like, sure, you're getting a 185 hertz display, but no game is taking advantage of it.
I would agree with you in general. That's been my approach too. I feel like it's kind of why, because especially the flagships today are really good. But then thermals really matter. If you play sustained,
True.
one of the things that ASUS lets you do is there's two USB-C ports. So there's one on the side and one on the back. So if you hold it like this, you can charge at the bottom. Also, you can set it to power the phone without charging the battery. So the problem is these features, well, the extra USB-C port is physical, but you can software. They could do the thing where like you don't charge the battery when you're playing a game on a regular flagship, and so that's not that big of a deal, right? But I think that trigger buttons, I can see the reason for that. On the Red Magic, the fan makes a huge difference for that sustained performance. Like you can do that with the ASUS ROG. You just have to put like one of those little optional fans that they have. But I like that Red Magic has it built in. And in that sense, I think if you're playing a ton of games all the time and maybe cameras are not as important to you and your budget is I can only have one phone, I think there's maybe something to be said, I used to be more like, I don't care. Why do they exist? And now after using them a little bit, I'm like, okay, maybe I get it. It's not for me, but I get it.
Yeah, like there's a specific market for gamers, but more than hardware, what I feel is there's a need for more demanding and better games to make use of that hardware. Like Apple is doing good stuff with their games on Mac and iOS. Like, sure, it doesn't run well on iPhones today, but at least they've laid the foundation for the upcoming and models in the future, which will take advantage of the hardware, more powerful hardware, and then those games will run better. Like literal PC titles, console titles coming to iPhone. That's unheard of, and it's good. You don't have that thing on Android unless you emulate stuff, and that's a whole rabbit hole for itself.
Yeah, for sure. No, I see your point. Like, I think that's another issue, right? But I don't think, I think it's the nice thing about Android is that we have all these different form factors, right? Otherwise, there'd be one phone, it'd be the Pixel, right? Like,
Oof.
And I mean, multiple sizes or whatever. But I'm not against it. And,
I'm not against it either. Diversity is always the best thing. Yeah.
I still think that personally, if you're shopping for, for a gaming phone and you're going to upgrade maybe every year, every 2 years because you want the best performance, I think go with Red Magic because even though their software is kind of meh and you don't get upgrades and stuff, you're not going to get updates on the ASUS very much either, number one. Number two, the Red Magic is way more affordable. And I think that that built-in fan is a big differentiator. And I think that, I love ASUS. I love what they do. I have a lot of their products, but I think that Red Magic nails it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but ROG Phone 9 Pro only has 2 years of software updates.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well,
and that's what I'm saying. Like, but I think it's because of the audience, right? They know that they're going to sell this to gamers, and gamers are just going to buy a new phone anyway, right?
True.
So next up, we have some Samsung rumors and some Samsung news. So we talked about this last week on the show. There's rumors of a Z Flip FE coming, like fan edition. So this obviously would be the Z Flip 7 now because the 6 is out already. And it looks like it's more and more rumors are shaping up to it happening. So the latest is that it's going to be more affordable and probably like $200 less or so than the regular. Same displays, a lesser processor, potentially an Exynos 2400, which I believe is the same chip that's inside the fan edition, the S25 fan edition. And then maybe slightly lesser cameras, which I kind of find hard to believe because the cameras on the Z Flip are not the greatest to start with. So how can you knock that down some? But look, no matter what the specs end up being, I'm 100% in favor of Samsung doing this because here's the thing. The cheap Moto Razr, right, the cheaper one of the two, is a really great phone for the money. And I think Samsung desperately needs competition there.
And do you think they'll fumble this launch and launch it with a small outer display, just like Z Flip 2?
The rumor so far is it will be the same display. So I'm not sure.
Okay, because I was like,
but remember,
they're doing a fan edition. Yeah.
Same display as the Flip 6.
That's fascinating.
The Flip 7 will probably have a full front display like the Moto Razr. It's been 2 generations of Moto Razr now. And we've seen the Xiaomi Mix Flip, which I have, a bunch of phones now have had full screen displays, as folding phones like clamshell. So I think Samsung can't stay with that weird cutout thing that they have. Like, that's obsolete now.
It's fascinating how they kickstarted the whole foldables trend, but now they're just lacking. They're slacking. I don't know why.
Because you're right. Innovation. I think you just used the right word. They're sitting on their laurels. They're just like resting and going, we don't care because we're the leaders. But I think the fact that they launched that Fold 6 special edition in Korea and whatever the W25 Fold whatever in China, I think that tells me that they're aware that the competition is heating up. And the fact that we're seeing these rumors of a fan edition also tells me that. I think, and I'm hoping for Samsung's sake, not for my sake, because I'm not a big Samsung fan personally, but for their sake and for people who buy a lot of Samsung phones and swear by them, I hope that the Fold and the Flip coming up for 25 are going to be significant upgrades without significant price changes because it's needed. It's time, we'll see. But the next one that I'm more excited about in a way is Apple and Samsung are trying to outdo each other here, which is kind of cool. We've had rumors for a long time now of an iPhone 17 Air or something that's going to be super thin with a single camera, very ballsy. I can totally see Apple doing that too. Pulling like a headphone jack. We had the courage of putting a single camera in the back, right? And you never know if they made a 200 megapixel single camera in the back that started at 0.6x, right? They could potentially zoom in with some AI processing up to maybe 4x or 5x, right? So I want to give them the benefit of that. But Samsung is obviously, there's been rumors, we talked about them in previous shows, of an S25 Slim. And now we have some potential camera specs for that, which I'm kind of excited about because I thought for sure Samsung was going to kind of make the cameras crap. And it looks like we're getting 200 plus 50 plus 50. So that's actually better specs than the S24 Plus and S24 regular, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, okay. So it might be that the Slim is a premium phone too, right? Like it costs almost as much or more than the Ultra even.
Do you recall the time when there was a craze between Chinese OEMs and other smartphone manufacturers where they were in the race to create the slimmest phone possible?
I do.
It's like
exciting times.
Something like that. When are you aware of the company called Gioni? They used to make.
I remember Gioni. Yeah.
I had that slim S5.5,
super slim one. And do you remember the Moto Z, the original Z, the of the mods? It was 5 millimeters thick.
Oh, that was so nice.
Yeah.
Just as a joke, I took the Gioni one and I cut some fruits and posted a photo. Like, wow, this is so slim, can cut a fruit.
Fantastic. So stay tuned for more as we find out more on this. I mean, basically right now it looks like 3.5x optical zoom and an ultra wide and a regular sensor at 200 megapixels. So what's interesting though, and this ties in with a piece of news that just got announced, that Samsung's launched a new kind of telephoto sensor and lens system called the ISOCELL ALoP for all lenses on Prism. And so let's get a bit nerdy here for a second. So if you have a telephoto right now, you have 2 options, right? Or 3, really. Mm-hmm. You have the option of just sensor, lens. And for those of you listening, imagine a pancake stack, okay? So sensor at the bottom, that's the plate, and then your pancakes on top are the lenses. So that's the traditional way to do it. And eventually you run out of thickness, right? Like if you try to do like 5x or something, or 10x, it's really hard to do that because you need a very thick camera bump. So solution was to flip the sensor on its side, right? And then have kind of like a periscope, right? And that's a periscope telephoto. So basically you have sensor on its side, and then you have a bunch of lenses inside like a tube. And then there's a prism at the end that reflects the light into the lens, and there's one lens outside. And that's generally, you can see it on a phone because it's got a rectangular cutout usually. And that's pretty common. And then there is the tetraprism design that Apple came up with, which is now, by the way, on the OnePlus 13, the Realme GT 7 Pro, the Find X8, and the Find X8 Pro for the 3x lens. They don't call it tetraprism, but it's essentially 3 prisms. So basically bounces off twice instead of like a periscope where it angles once, it angles twice. And so imagine the design, if for those of you listening, the sensor is now facing down towards the screen, and then the lens, there's basically 2 kinks, right? So there's one prism and another prism and another prism, and then it adds up to like 2 kinks. And that's, the tetraprism idea that iPhone came up with. Although Apple's is kind of staggered. So they have the sensor is kind of like, imagine the pancake stack that you have and you slide it sideways.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So that's how they do the tetraprism. But I'm pretty sure that Oppo does it with like what I described.
Yes.
Anyway, so Samsung is now doing their own new thing where it's like a periscope, but they are able to kind of put more lenses. So it's kind of like taking some of the lenses out of the tube and put them back on the pancake stack. So it's
basically removing the lenses from x-axis and putting it on y-axis.
Correct. Yeah. So it's actually a great idea because it actually makes, for less depth, but takes up less space in a periscope telephoto. So I think that's pretty smart. So let's see what happens. And I wouldn't be surprised if they use that in the Slim, the S25 Slim, right? And maybe in some other phones too. So I think that's pretty cool.
And that's the thing about Samsung flagships. Like they come out in January and then they have to fight with all of the flagships all throughout the year. Like right now, we're talking about Find X8 Pro. We're in November and we're competing it with S24 Ultra, which came all the way back in January. So that's pretty fascinating. They just launch once at the beginning of the year and they're like, yeah, see you next year.
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, they want to be first in the West, right? So, China is always going to beat us, right? So that's why the Find X is global now. So that is impressive. This is the first time we've had a global phone in December, I think.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on that. And also the ASUS. And the Realme. The Realme is a global phone as well. Like, again, I'm not talking US market, right? When I say global, I mean rest of the world, but not China, or with China.
Out of China.
Yeah. The next bit we have is some Xiaomi 15 Ultra rumors of basically what looks like an X-ray photo of the camera setup for the 15 Ultra. And so it looks like we're staying with the same thing. We're looking at what looks like a giant 1-inch 50 megapixel sensor with variable aperture. And then what I see here is an ultra wide, a 3x telephoto maybe, and a periscope 5x telephoto or 6x. That's basically the same setup. So I don't expect too much difference, but it's been rumored that the big thing might actually be a 200 megapixel telephoto. So I don't know if they're going to put that in the periscope or if they're going to put that under, some tetraprism type lens, but it'll be interesting to see how they do that, right?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. But the whole layout looks so weird to me. Like on all of the phones, it's arranged neatly in some pattern or the other. Here it's like an L shape. It looks very
You're
weird.
right. Usually it's kind of like 4 corners, the bit of spacing, and this is like, you're right, because there's a circle. I'll put a link in the show notes to the GSM Marine article, but you can see the camera pod circles everything,
Exactly.
but then it's an L shape. You're right. It's very strange.
If you see the leaked render, the link is right below the image. It looks so weird. Even its final form, it looks so incomplete, a bit weird.
Yeah, I don't know.
But hey, if it works, good for them.
I mean, exactly. And I'd be very interesting to see what they do. Like if one of these lenses is like just like a portrait lens, and then that massive, periscope is like a 200 megapixel, crazy like Vivo does. It'll be interesting to see.
That'll be fun to see, yes.
But yeah, you're right. Those renders are very strange. All right. Moving on, we have a Nubia Z70 series. So the Red Magic 10 was launched last week. We talked about that. And, the Nubia and Red Magic are kind of twin companies, are one. And so they share a lot of parts and designs. And generally, the Nubia Z70 is like a flagship, proper flagship. And then you get the Red Magic, which is the gaming phone, but both share the same display and chassis usually. You get better camera on the Nubia because it's more of a flagship. You don't get the fan, you don't get the trigger buttons, so it's not a gaming phone. But they have that crazy ass. I love that super square monolith. That's
it.
where I don't mind the slap sides, Shimon. Like this is where I'm okay with it because it looks so crazy. It looks like the monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey, right?
I just don't need rounded corners. Eliminate those.
Yeah,
You're just cutting into screen real estate.
exactly.
And I know there's a quick tangent, but the way how Pixel handles split screen, you get corners in the display itself. I don't know why. If you have two apps, the two apps won't meet at the middle. They'll have rounded corners at the bottom. Why? Makes
I
no
don't know.
sense.
I don't
But
understand.
anyway,
So, anyway, expect this Z70 Ultra to have a Snapdragon 8 Elite, of course. And then they're going to have a 35 millimeter main camera. That's been an ongoing thing from Nubia. They don't do a 24 millimeter main, which is great because they're ultra wide goes to 0.5 all the way to 1.5x or 1.4x, and then the main starts over from there. And then we're going to get a 64 megapixels 5x telephoto, basically the same setup as in last year's Z60. And a massive screen with an under display camera like the Red Magic 10 for the selfies. So those under display cameras are getting better, by the way. So they're still not great, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. Oh, variable aperture apparently too on that 35 millimeter lens. That's an upgrade over last year, right?
that's fascinating, yeah. But do you think the mechanical cameras died way too quickly? The mechanical selfie cameras?
Yes. Yes. You mean the ones that flip over and stuff?
Yeah, flip over or just coming like on OnePlus 7 Pro.
Oh, the pulling out.
Yeah,
The
the
problem. I mean, somebody just recently wrote an article about that, and I agree that it was cool, but I also I'm not worried about reliability, but water resistance is definitely an issue, and I personally don't mind having a tiny little punch hole. Like it's on the iPhone, it's too much, right?
Yeah.
But I think we've reached also price, and the real estate inside the phone. Like, think about that. Like, I'd rather have a periscope telephoto and not having a pop-up selfie camera, mechanical.
I wholeheartedly agree. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree.
So, given the choice, yeah. All right, let's see. Oh, yeah. And then, Huawei's Mate X6 foldable is also coming on November 26th, same day as the Nubia. So, I like to keep track of what Huawei's doing because they're doing crazy stuff. And that trifold, I don't know if you've played with it. Incredible, right?
I was just sitting behind Michael. I was seeing him use it ever so nicely. So like, well, that's insane.
It's absolutely crazy. I love that thing. And so this is basically a bifold version of that, much more affordable. Think of this as kind of like Magic V3 because, despite the fact that they don't want to admit it, in my opinion, Honor and Huawei are still the same company. So basically think of this as like the Magic V3 for China, for Huawei. From the specs, that's basically what it looks like. It's going to be super thin and super sexy. I love that finish on the marble there. Very cool.
Yeah.
So,
I love when companies try something new because this glass is just getting real old at this point.
Agreed. This is a good one, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. So we've heard a couple of different rumors this week. We've heard that Google's working on another Pixel laptop. And, of course, they've done that Pixel Book Go. I've got them. I love my old Pixel Book that turns into a tab. Is great. Super premium like the Pixel laptops used to be as well. And I'd love to see another one of those. But at the same time, we're hearing rumors that they're going to be running Android on these things and that they're going to start merging Chrome OS and Android into one. And I'm not opposed to that per se, but I do hope that the Chrome version of the web browser Chrome in these devices are as powerful and as good as the desktop Chrome browser in Chrome OS. Because to me, that's the big difference between using an Android tablet and a Chromebook, is that I have a desktop class browser. I'm not making any compromise. Like, sure, like I don't have, I have a small file system. I have no other apps. I can run Android apps. And I think this is where the line is getting blurry, right? It's like, but I do hope that if they do this, I'm okay with it. Android's fine. That way it's probably more flexible, more integrated for running the apps. But give me the Chrome OS web browser on Android on a laptop or tablet. That's what I want.
I think they started planting the seeds when they started introducing desktop mode on Android, just in developer builds. So I think they planted the seeds there, and this is somewhat pointing in that direction because they want to concise everything into one system. And I see that's a really great thing because right now it's being bifurcated into two or multiple instances of like Chrome OS or Android L, if you remember, like it was for big screens, Android 12L, and then you have Android 12 normal. So doing this consolidated way would be really great for consistency across the whole device. You can say, oh, you want laptop, tablets, phones, or anything, it runs on Android.
Yeah.
So that'll be really, really nice. But like I said, if it comes to laptops, it needs to make sure that it has apps and functionality that you expect from a desktop PC or like, in a desktop environment. It's not like a half-assed Android version of the Chrome app where you can't use shortcuts or whatever.
I use Chrome OS a lot and I use it for heavy lifting, like serious web work. Like, I can't have compromise. This needs to be exactly the same as Chrome on my Mac or Chrome on a PC. So if they can deliver that and running Android, especially with the chips today, I have no problems with that. Like, that's not a big deal at all. So I'm actually excited about this because I love Google hardware. I want more Google hardware.
I miss the Pixelbook. I never got to use it because it never came to India, but the way it's constructed and the way it has a light bar on top, it's amazing. You just knock it and you get the battery level. It's really great.
Yeah, it's a really, really good one. Finally, to wrap things up, I found out about this product recently. It's interesting. So, you can buy a pen for your iPad, right? Like you can buy it from Apple, Logitech makes some. There's different models at different price points with different capabilities like, tilt detection and stuff like that. This is a known thing. What if instead of losing your $100 pen and not having all the functionality you want because you have to buy the fancy Apple pen or the fancy Logitech pen. And what if you keep losing your pen all the time? What if there was a solution to all of these problems? And this is what Sonar Pen is. Sonar Pen is basically a pen that plugs into your iPad via USB-C. So it doesn't have a battery. It's just tethered. And you're going to say, ooh, terrible idea. Why would you want that? Then think about it for a second. First of all, it's $30. Okay. Second, you'll never lose it because it's tethered, right? And third, it has the same functionality as the highest end Apple Pencil. So it's like pressure sensitivity, palm rejection, shortcut button, tilt detection, and you can replace the nub.
And you don't have to charge it.
And you never have to charge it. And
in the most awkward way possible. So
I know.
That's a win-win.
Oh my God. Yeah. So look, I'm not an iPad. I don't have an iPad. I think they're great. I know my friends love their iPads, but if you're frustrated with your Apple Pencil or your Logitech pen or whatever, and you want something that you'll never lose, that doesn't cost much, so if you do lose it, you don't care, and gives you the same functionality for a lot less, especially in markets like India where people are very budget conscious, I think this is a good solution. So they're crowdfunding this right now. I think they've delivered the first generation a couple of years back. So these people are obviously to be trusted. They're not just like, I'm sure they're going to deliver. So yeah, maybe something worth it. I personally, if I had an iPad, $30 crowdfunding, I'd try it out. It's not a lot of money. So yeah, so that's what we've got for news. Do you have any thoughts? Please add.
News.
Yes, go on.
So, are you aware of PlayStation Portal? It's a handheld device.
Yeah. So they just announced something this week related to that, right? That you can remote from the cloud now. Is that what I heard?
As opposed to just streaming from your PS5, you can now remotely access games via the cloud. So Finally, I mean, it's still not running games natively, but still, I mean, natively wasn't possible. It's a handheld. So now you can stream games from the cloud, which is really,
Very
really
cool.
amazing. Yeah, you're not
Yeah.
just tethered to your own device.
I saw that news and I thought to myself, yeah, that's cool. But I mean, to me, I was like, it's actually surprised me that they don't already do that, right? Like, I mean,
Exactly.
obviously, Sony is in the business of selling hardware, right? So they don't want you to have a PlayStation 5 at home that you can stream, right, to your portal. But I think that, like, I think they're reading the room because there are a lot of people out there, especially people like you and I who are very mobile, who don't necessarily either have the space or the money or the time to deal with a real PlayStation 5.
Mhm.
And that's okay, right? Like, I used to work for Sony Computer Entertainment. I made video games for 20 years before I was a journalist. I was an evangelist for PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita and PlayStation Portable. So
Yeah.
I know everything about Sony that you need to know. I'm not against Sony in any way, but I'm just saying, like, some people don't want a PlayStation 5 at home. They just want the PlayStation 5 experience anywhere they are. And I think having it in the cloud like that is brilliant. I just didn't realize they hadn't done that yet.
That's the thing. Like, I don't own a PS5. Like, the whole meme aside, I just use my PC. Like, all PlayStation exclusives on available on PC now. So I just use my PC. I
Perfect.
stream it, and I stream it to my TV, which is in the other room, and I just connect a controller and play on it. There is literally like margin. Like, the latency is not bad. It's not bad. It's very manageable. So if you have a NVIDIA GPU, you can just use Moonlight and Sunshine, which are two different protocols for streaming, for client and both server side, which is really great. You can just stream anything. You can use it on your phone as well. It's amazing. And
Wow.
that's the thing.
Cool.
People were expecting a normal handle from Sony, like a PSP or PS Vita, but they came up with Portal. And with the rise of gaming handles in the market right now, with Steam Deck, RGLIX, and MSI Claw and others, I think they're going to recalibrate their product lineup and introduce a proper handle in the future. Maybe with
I
PS6, who knows?
really hope so because I love the PSP and I love the Vita. And I think Sony definitely needs a competing product that is like the best, right? Like, because I hate to say this, but I'm a big fan of Xbox as well because trust me, coding on Xbox is way easier. The Wii is a fantastic product, but Sony, we know they can deliver the best one with the best titles, with the best ecosystem. And I hope they deliver that soon.
I mean, not only the hardware, like at first you would say, like, okay, the hardware is not powerful enough to run games. It's getting better. Like you have Steam Deck and even Nintendo Switch. It's an age-old hardware which is still running for some reason.
Yep.
And not only that, but now you can pair a relatively powerful hardware which doesn't suck battery, and also you have AI upscalers like DLSS, FSR, and PlayStation's own PSSR, which you can use to run games at low resolution and get a playable state. Like, okay, you can maybe aim for 30 FPS with those graphics, which is nice. Earlier, you won't be able to do that, like on PS Vita, which had an unfortunate early death. It
Yes.
couldn't live as long as PSP, but it's what it is. I guess it was way too early in the market.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we should wrap up. Shimon, do you want to tell people where they can find you on the internet, your various social media handles, your podcast, your
Yes.
any websites, and anything else you do?
That's the thing. Having a unique name, you don't have to find various usernames. Just my name, Shimon, SHIMONDAS. You just type it, you'll find me everywhere. And you can also
That's
check out
right.
my podcast. It's called Yet Another Tech Podcast. I know, very cheesy name, but it delivers. You know what exactly it is.
Do you have
So
a
yeah, you can
website
find
or
my
YouTube
name
as well?
again, shimondas.com. You can find me.
Fantastic.
Just Google my name, you'll find me. It's as simple as that.
Fantastic. And folks, you know where to find me. I'm at Tankgirl. That's TNKGRL. Like the comic book, just drop the vowels. You get my handle on everywhere. I'm still on X or Twitter. I don't use it much. I'm mostly on Threads. I'm Blue Sky. I'm also on Mastodon. I'm of course on Insta. So find me all there and comment with Shimon and us. Talk with us on social. Let us know what questions and comments you have about the podcast. And then, of course, the podcast itself lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. You can subscribe there or you can subscribe on any of your favorite platforms, Google, Apple, Spotify, etc. So please subscribe and tell your friends if it's your first time here. And, the YouTube channel is youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. I got some videos there like unboxings and stuff. So check that out. And you know how YouTube works. So like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, comment, all that good stuff. And also, if you want to support me financially and help me out, there's a Patreon, patreon.com/tankgirl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. And the trick here is that you get a video version of the podcast. You get it a day in advance. It's $5 a month for every show, which is every week. And you get to see us, and we have devices we show. And sometimes you go overtime and I leave the extra stuff. Sometimes I have bloopers in there. So it's fun. So you get that in advance, and you get it with video every week. So if you want to support me, that's one way to do it. There's also other tiers. If you want to get other perks, you check it out. So patreon.com/TNKGRL. And I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. You know I review a lot of phones, so I'm constantly juggling multiple devices. While that's fun, it also means I'm spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. Thankfully, there's Mint Mobile, and that's who I'm teaming up with for today's podcast. If you want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. You've probably seen the Mint Mobile ads featuring Ryan Reynolds, but let me quickly tell you how fantastic their service is, especially for tech-savvy early adopters like us. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current devices and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM card free of charge. The whole process only takes 15 minutes, and if you get stuck, Mint has a great customer service team to get you through it. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus lightning-fast 5G and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link, mintmobile.com/mobiletech, to get premium wireless starting at $15 a month. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And finally, thanks, Shimon, for joining me very last minute this week. I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful chatting with you because we didn't talk much in India.
It's always great catching up with you. We always had nice conversations, no matter where we are.
Absolutely. Folks, I'll have Shimon on again at some point in the future. And we'll have a podcast next week. So please stay tuned for that. And until then, cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.